our meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to order. Before we get to our list of public hearings, I'd like to just take a short moment at the outset to recognize the loss to the town of Terry Gilbertson. He was a friend and colleague to so many here in Woodbridge and in New Haven throughout his career. He was our building official, our inland wetlands and zoning enforcement officer, but really a fixture here in Town Hall and part of the Town Hall family, and his loss is really felt by all of the folks who work here in Town Hall. He had been here since 1998. The words to describe him was generous, hardworking, a great sense of humor, and he will be sorely missed. I wanted to give a moment at the outset if anyone on the Town Plan or Zoning Commission wanted to share a thought or a memory or something they wanted to share with the group about Terry before we get started.
What you said, Terry was an absolute gentleman and a great benefit to the town, and his loss will be surely missed.
Echo that.
He had deep knowledge that he shared with the commission on a regular basis, and his loss will be deeply felt.
His comments were always good, and they were very welcome to the commission.
So, thank you all. Chris, I believe there's going to be a celebration of Terry's life, and the date for it.
It's going to be on Sunday, November 17th, and it's going to be in the auditorium with the JCC, kind of offer that space for us. And it'll be from 2 to 4, and everybody's welcome to come. Terry loved to tell stories, and it's our turn to tell stories about him.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks all to members of the commission, and our condolences to Terry's immediate family and his really extended family, the family here at the town of Woodbridge. So with that, I will move us over to the regular business of our meeting. I believe we have 2 items for public hearing, and the first item that is up is a application for a bed and breakfast in residence from Gladys, and I apologize, Sizmar at 555 Amity Road. Now, Chris, do I read into the public record our notice of public hearing? Should I do them both at once? Okay. So this was the notice that was published in the New Haven Register on Thursday the 24th and Thursday, October 31st. Notice of public hearings for the Woodbridge Town Plan and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that the Town Plan and Zoning Commission will hold public hearings on Monday, November 4th, 2019, here in the central meeting room of the Town Hall at 11 Meeting House Lane in Woodbridge, beginning at 7:30 p.m. on the following items. Item 1 is the application for a special permit for use of a bed and breakfast in residence by Gladys Sizmar at 555 Amity Road. Item 2 is an application for a special permit for use of a portion of the building by Bravo Goalkeeping for teaching goalkeeping skills to students at Woodbridge Properties LLC at 15 Lunar Drive. The files for these 2 items were available for review in the Land Use Office of the Town Hall here at 11 Meeting House Lane. So having officially read into the record our public notices, is there someone from Gladys Sizmar's application for the bed and breakfast who'd like to come forth to speak on behalf? So if you can come up to the microphone and sign in at the microphone desk. And
I'm her husband, Kevin.
hi, Kevin.
I apologize for Gladys. Our grandson was born this morning in Virginia.
Mazel tov. Congratulations.
It's our first, and she is with our daughter.
Understandably not here. That is a...
So I will try to answer any questions or...
Great. And your name again, I'm sorry?
Kevin Sizmar.
Thank you, Kevin. So Kevin, if you'd like to just give a quick, brief overview of the application and what you're seeking to do at 555 Amity Road.
Yeah, so we have a 5-bedroom home at 555 Amity. Basically, the house is kind of set up into 2 major rectangles. And we would like to use a portion of that house, only 2 bedrooms with the bathrooms, as a possible bed and breakfast with separate dining. We have separate bedrooms, separate entrance, and also separate bathrooms for our guests.
So I believe all the members of the commission have received the filing. Is there any
Yeah.
questions?
You said that 2 bedrooms will be offered,
Yes.
because the application provides for 5 bedrooms. to
Yeah,
be offered.
we would currently only use 2. I think it was recommended that we put in for 5, but our plan is to use the 2 bedrooms.
But it's a 5-bedroom house.
It is a 5-bedroom house, yes.
Okay. So therefore, if you put in for 5 bedrooms, you're saying you would rent the entire place.
I understand. Okay,
I mean, that's what you're saying
understood.
by the application. I-
Other questions, concerns, thoughts from the commission?
Your property is if I'm on Amity Road facing your property,
Yep.
I see like you said, it's 2 sort of connected
Rectangle.
rectangles. Yeah.
basically,
So is it the front one or
the front portion of it?
That's
Yes.
the
Yep,
front,
of the
okay.
property. Yes.
And then I noticed you talked about the parking. So just could you talk to us about where the parking will be?
It'll be more towards the back of the property. We have like a barn section in the back area. There would be no off-street parking or no parking on, I guess, the old Amity Road is, I guess, what it was called at one point.
And how many entrances do you have to get? You have one driveway, or do you
We have currently have one driveway. It's
One
kind of
drive-
like a horseshoe. Yes.
so it's 2 an entrance and an exit.
An exit,
Uh-huh.
yep, onto Amity Road.
I'm still a little confused. Are you asking for 5 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms? 'Cause it says
We are
in-
asking for
It says in the description, I would like to utilize 2 of the bedrooms.
Yes, we're asking for 2 bedrooms. I think we might have been confused when she.
Okay,
applied.
I just,
Yeah,
okay, so you're
I
looking
think
to use.
initially it said something about no more than 5 bedrooms can be used or something like that in the
All right, but
application.
you
so
only intend to use.
We only intend to use 2 of the
So the
bedrooms.
application's for 2 bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the intention then that
And then she
it'll
says
be
later on 5 bedrooms.
like a website, you know, listed on various websites and that sort of thing? and
Correct, like
some
an
come
Expedia
through?
type of bed and under bed and breakfast, yes, it would be advertised that way.
And would it be correct to assume that, I mean, not all lodging establishments require like a credit card or that kind of thing? You could just make you could just make a reservation. Would you guys be requiring that sort of thing? And the only reason that I'd ask is because, as you probably know, there's some opposition, at least somebody has made some written opposition expressing concerns, right? And so I'm just curious.
No, we would want it secured through a credit card, I believe, yes, yeah, absolutely. Speaking to our neighbors across the street who also, I think they run an Airbnb, kind of run the same type of
Sure.
situation.
What's the maximum length of stay someone could have?
We kind of envisioned it for like a weekend, you know, weekend getaway, whether it be, you know, either Yale students or something like that, people coming in. But yeah, we never envisioned it for more than just like a 2-night stay. We weren't looking for like long-term.
Any additional questions, thoughts, or comments before we go to the public portion? No?
Have you talked to your neighbors around, other than the one that you mentioned, who runs the?
I've not been in contact with the people that kind of live behind us.
Sure.
No, I think those were the only other real neighbor that we currently have. That would be any interference, I guess, if you will, or yeah, any real contact, so.
Okay.
And you only plan to make rooms available when somebody is home, when the owner is home?
Yes, that's correct, yes, that would be my wife on.
Have you done this in the past, in past home you've had, or?
No, this would be our
This
first
is your
time,
first
yeah,
time doing
yes, this will be our first time.
ask again, because you keep coming up with good questions. I don't know. I'll ask again, you may come up with another question. Anyone else have further questions for the applicants? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now shift to open it up for public.
And we need to note that we did get a letter from.
I was just about to. But I was going to see if there's anyone in the audience who is here for public comment on the application at 555 Amity Road to operate a bed and breakfast for really 2 bedrooms of lodging. So I don't see anyone from the public jumping up to the microphone. So I will note that in response to this zoning change request, we did receive via email on or about October 20th of 2019, a note from the owner of 10 Seymour Road, Chen Zhao, who are unfortunately unable to be here today in person due to a prior commitment traveling out of town. They did submit a letter, which do all members of the commission, do they receive that letter? I see nods all around. So it will be a letter that will be entered into the record for this application. Chris, do I need to read it in, or can it just be noticed as in the record?
So as long as you've all received it, it can be noticed, if any member of the public wants to hear it read, then we can read it.
Would anyone like to hear me read it? I have a good, nice, dramatic voice. Okay. Folks do want to hear me read it, so I shall. So dear Town Plan and Zoning Officers, this is Zhen Xiao and Hong Tang, homeowners of the 10 Seymour Road. We are informed by a letter from your office which specified a public hearing will be held on November 4th for the breakfast in bed zoning change request proposed by the homeowners of 555 Amity Road. Although we would like to attend this hearing and expressed our concerns there, we will have a long trip planned for this post-Halloween weekend, including November 4th on Monday, and most likely would not be able to attend the coming hearing. We are also told that we can write down our concerns and submit them to officers of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to present to the hearing to take them into consideration when the bed and breakfast zoning change request proposed by the 555 Amity Road will be evaluated. Our concerns to the bed and breakfast zoning change request proposed by 555 Amity Road are based on the following factors. Although the mailing address of our house is at 10 Seymour Road, the physical location of our house is directly on the opposite side of the Amity Road and is within 500 yards to the house at 555 Amity Road. Thus, any negative effect as a result of the bed and breakfast zoning change would surely have a direct impact on our home. One of our major concerns is the safety issue that would be brought by a zoning change request. We chose to buy our home at 10 Seymour Road at Woodbridge on November 2018, primarily due to the excellent school district and safety environment offered by the Woodbridge community. We have 2 young kids and a bigger one attending BRS, which I believe is Beecher Road School, and the younger one attending a daycare at Woodbridge. As every parent would do, our primary goal is to keep our kids in a safe neighborhood in town. The breakfast and bed zoning change of 555 Amity Road would potentially bring dynamic guest turnover with various backgrounds to our neighborhood on a daily basis. And without a system to know and or check background of these individuals, we feel it would raise a significant long-term safety concern to our neighborhood. Additionally, as homeowners in Woodbridge, we would know that it is not easy to keep house value in this market in recent years. And when people shop for a house, I am sure that most people would pay attention to the distance of their future house to commercial units and or a zoning code area different from a residential zone. We feel that the zoning change request proposed by 555 Amity Road would bring significant negative impact to our home value as well as to other houses around us. In addition, although we understand that a bed and breakfast zoning change on this proposed unit would perhaps raise some property tax to the town, we doubt that whether a potential devaluation of many affected houses around this unit would be in line with the town's long-term interests. As a result of these concerns, we feel it is hard for us to support such a proposal made by 555 Amity Road unless the above-mentioned issues can be fairly addressed. I sincerely hope that our concerns will be seriously considered when the proposal of zoning change request on 555 Amity Road will be evaluated. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Sincerely, Chen Zhao, and Hong Tang. Okay. Chris, anything further we need to do? Okay, and this then moves to our discussion in session, or we do,
Now you'll do your next hearing, and then after you've closed both of them, then you can go into your work session.
I always appreciate you. I'm still new enough that I get to ask on the procedures. So I will move to the next item up for public hearing, which is Woodbridge Properties LLC and 15 Lunar Drive, the application for a special permit for use of a portion of the building by Bravo Goalkeeping for teaching goalkeeping skills to students. Is there a representative of 15 Lunar Drive who'd like to come up? You both can, and you can add a chair up there, and if you could both please sign in and then state your names and make them.
So my name is Paul Delastrito. I'm the owner of Bravo Goalkeeping. And this is Tom Wilkinson. He owns the building. Bravo Goalkeeping is a company I've had since '97. I've been a full-time soccer coach for 23 years, coaching just goalkeepers, youth goalkeepers, usually long-term. I do also overall fitness, soccer-related fitness, also for lots of players. So I have an existing clientele, and I'm looking for a place to centralize the training so I don't have to drive around anymore, really, because I'm not getting any younger. So, real simple, looking to just zone it recreational, put down turf, and net off the ceiling and the walls. That's really it. I've had a couple of these before, so I know what I'm doing. The setup. Small, again, you said it's goalkeeping. It's not for field players. It's just goalies, so it's always small numbers, anywhere between 1 and 4 or 5 kids max.
What is the present use of the space that you're
It's vacant.
vacant?
It's vacant.
What had it been used for in the past?
A gentleman stored, bought and sold Porsches, so it was, car storage was allowed there. Yeah, and with, the only thing that's gonna be, the only thing that's gonna be done inside the space is there's one single office, which was permitted, a bathroom, which was already permitted. AstroTurf is going down, netting, and that's it. And from the corner of my building, I bought the building back in 2002. From the corner of my building, I could lob a rock over to the tennis bubble, okay, which is very, very close. At the other end of, I believe it's Research Drive, you have the, that big volleyball complex. So you have this type of stuff in the area. And why it would work for us is, you know, one of the things, we do have fairly limited parking there. Well, he doesn't need much parking at all. Most of his teaching is done in the very, very late in the afternoon when everybody from my office is gone. So it's, I don't think anybody will even know he's back there, you know?
Is your office the only other occupant of
Yeah.
the building?
Yeah.
My hours are about 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, that's it.
Pretty simple setup.
And what days of the week would you be doing it?
It's Monday through Friday, definitely 5 to 9. Those are my main hours.
Oh, you don't do it on the weekend at all?
A little bit,
Oh.
maybe Sunday nights. Not a lot, because weekends usually I go out to games to watch these people.
Okay. Yeah, again, nothing changes to the outside of the building, nothing changes to the inside of the building, except AstroTurf and netting, protective netting for the walls.
It's that turf with the rubber infill pellets.
So
Yeah.
there's no signage indicating what's there now?
There will be, I'll put a sign up.
Yeah, he'll put just a very small, I have a big Advantage maintenance sign, and then we'll put a small sign underneath.
In the front, and then a
Yeah,
few on the thing, and on one on the door, the glass
Yeah.
door. It's invite only. It's really not open to the public. These are people that contact me who, I mean, it's not like, you know, a kid comes once and then I'll never see him again. These are like, you know, 5, 6, 7-year students.
It's just any signage will have to mesh with what our regs say is
Right.
permitted.
I'm
Yeah.
used to that. I have a lot of banners, so it's not like a lot of hard signs.
just so you know, how I know Paul is Paul was actually the coach for my neighbor who's actually the starting freshman goalie at Boston College right now. So that's the level of player that he deals with. So it's not like he's advertising out there. It's a network of people, you know, that community that they contract with Paul to help their kids be better goalies.
Actually, one of my long-term students was Alyssa Nair, the #1 on the U.S. national team, just won the World Cup. So she's had a lot of training since then. That was over a dozen years ago, but that's my chapter, is before college. They go away to college, I find a new 11-year-old.
And that is the age range? It's
11 to 18.
Yeah.
So how does establishing this location help you?
I can go back to back to back without having to drive anywhere. That's the key. I waste so much time in the car, and to rent a field the size we're talking about, this is 4,500 square feet, just under 4,000 will be turf. To rent that is, somewhere between $100 and $200 an hour somewhere else. So it's cost prohibitive at times, and I lose clients. At the present, I'm servicing about 1 out of every 5 people that contacts me. I have to fix that.
Other questions from members of the commission? Thank you very much. It sounds, good luck.
If you know anybody, send them up.
So now we will, once you sign in, thank you, Paul, we will open it up. Are there any members of the public who would like to come up and comment on this application for 15 Lunar Drive to allow the change of use of a portion of the building for goalkeeping instruction? I'm not seeing any members of the public jumping up to grab the microphone, so thank you both. So that now, Chris, allows us to close the public hearing portion of our meeting. Unless, do we need to do the other 2 things to move them to set them up for the next public hearing? Do we need to do that?
No, we'll do that under new business.
Okay. So great, now I will move to the work session for the commission to consider action on, we'll start with first Gladys.
Do we have to do the 824?
You do, but you can always say
Yeah, those 2 we're going to send to public, or we'll discuss.
what you're gonna consider here.
Okay. Okay. So we are now in our work session. The first one up is our application from Gladys Sizemar to open a bed and breakfast at 555 Amity Road, with the good clarification that they're really only seeking to have 2 bedrooms used. Open it up for questions, comments, discussion amongst the group.
I think our regulations are pretty clear. First of all, it's been characterized as a zone change. It's not a zone change. It's an allowed use subject to 3 conditions, all of which appear to be met in this case. So I don't know what discretion we have when those conditions are met.
I do. Chris, do we have other B&Bs that have been approved in town?
No, because this is the first time you've allowed it. This would be the first one.
And Andrew, the section, just so we can all,
I'm looking on page 33 of the regulations.
so those 3 conditions, establishment shall be owner occupied, which they are.
Yep,
Up to 5 bedrooms may be offered for lodging, and we've clarified that they're really offering 2.
yep.
And no parking shall be allowed within the front yard, and they have indicated that they have a back parking area by a barn.
That's my understanding.
Those are my understanding as well. Anyone have any other?
I guess what I would like to know is, since this is the first one that we are considering, the first application we're considering, and so we don't have experience in the town, what's the recourse should some of the concerns that are expressed by the neighbors be realized?
Once you allow use, this is a special exception, it stays with them.
does it stay with the property or with the owners of the house?
Typically, it stays with the owners of the house.
Were you asking, essentially, is there a check and balance on behavior? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I mean, if these people are expressing concern, and so if some of what they say that, you know, what do they talk about? Some of the traffic, dynamic guest turnover with varying backgrounds. I mean, what if some issues develop? What's the recourse?
Once you issue the permit is there, as long as they're abiding by the 3 terms that you have in your regulations.
Their recourse would be their own legal process to make a claim if they thought they had one.
But this is not as of right, this is a special exception case.
Right.
Correct.
It's a special exception that is, and I don't mean to be an advocate one way or the other, but just reading the regulation, it's allowed, subject to the following conditions, all of which appear to be met in this case.
The special exception. We can impose additional restrictions. Page 100.
So if you do, since this is our first run at one of those, if folks want to turn to page 100.
100, there's a threshold for granting of special exceptions, conditions and safeguards we can impose. What's in the regulation earlier, I think, is just the absolute minimum, and that's, we can continue to, we can add on additional because it is a special exception. 6.3. 6.3.
What else do you think you would?
No, I'm
like
not
to
saying,
add?
I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying, but we can if we wanted to.
So they have met the minimum for a bed and breakfast, the 3 pieces. I think we all generally agree that they've met those minimum requirements. The question is, on page 100, we can, in deciding whether to grant a special exception, we can give consideration to 7 different factors in Part C.
And take a look at H on page 101.
I'll also take a look at D2. It says that any special exception remains with the property, regardless of any change in ownership of the property.
Right.
I mean, is that something that we could say in this instance, it stays with the owners because it's our first one, and we see what's,
All of your home occupation permits that you issued before that were always by special exception were always issued to the individuals who applied.
well, that might be, Chris, but the regs say, any conditions or safeguards attached to the granting of a special exception shall remain with the property, as long as the special exception use is still in operation. And should you enforce regardless of any change in ownership of the property. That suggests that if somebody else were to buy that property with the understanding that they were gonna run it as a B and B, then they could still do that. That's just different than what you had said earlier. And I'm just wondering is if one of the limitations we could give is we would require that another permit be requested, another application be submitted, were there to be an ownership change, just so we can learn from the first instance in this town of granting a special exception.
For a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, I would support that approach.
Because I just
It
think we
makes
need to
sense.
learn from it.
Well, then I would also use H.
Sorry, I know you
No,
had
no,
said
in
H.
terms of reviewing it, periodic, you know, that's, to me, is more important.
Yeah.
What if we were to amend the regulations to delete D2?
Well, amending the regulations is a longer, more involved process.
It's not something we're gonna do tonight.
And then you would have to look at every time, look at all the
Ev-
places where special exceptions are granted and see whether or not you want to. So,
There's a suspension clause there, Kathleen, you look in section F, also on page 101. I'm not exactly sure what a cease and desist order, how that would work, but,
Well, that would be
If they
if
violate
we
it.
impose a
Something's
condition or
happened, yeah.
safeguard.
I like reviewing it on a periodic.
I think
basis.
reviewing it on a periodic basis makes sense, just
If there are
because it's the
complaints,
very
yeah.
first one.
Yeah, if there are.
Is there any other
complaints.
entity that's reviewing other than us for a business of this type that's operating, right? Like if you own a farm stand, I guess, does that get reviewed? Does that,
No,
well, liquor license gets renewed, doesn't it?
Not by your board.
right?
But there is someone that does it in town, right? It's good for so long.
that's state.
State only. How long is that?
Don't know.
Okay, okay. But I'm saying, I think it comes up from time to time, so I guess that would be the same concept here.
I would say review it in a couple of years.
Do what?
Review it in, say, 2 years.
Yeah.
I would
Give
agree
it
with that.
significant time to exist and work the kinks out, let it go through a couple annual cycles. I would support that.
So I'm hearing.
I just
that-
think we need to learn from it. It's, I don't
Sure.
think it's really
Sure.
fair to neighbors who have, especially those who have expressed concern, to impose this forever on the property without some sort of check and balance.
Okay, so I'm hearing, so adding a condition that will allow for a 2-year, after 2 years for a review back here. It says that the commission may set time limits and or require periodic renewal of the permit without a public hearing. So that would just be the applicant coming in for a check-in and a report after 2 years on how the bed and breakfast is functioning. Would that enable us to get an understanding of how the neighbors are feeling or reacting if it doesn't have a public hearing?
How would they know about it then?
Yeah, that's my question.
They get a copy of the decision that we made tonight.
But property will turn over, I mean, one neighbor here today could be gone in
Well, we
8
could take it
months.
upon ourselves to notify property owners.
The abutting
As a-
property
As
owners?
a courtesy, when applications come in, regardless of whether they have a public hearing or not, we send them a notice that an application has been made
To abutting property.
to abutting property owners. And abutting is who's directly across the road or who physically touches.
That's fine.
So that means that now we would let this family know, but then also in 2 years?
We
I-
did let this family know.
No, I mean of the decision, whatever
Let them
decision we
know
make
the
tonight.
decision. No, we tell them that an application has been made, so that they are aware that there's something pending before you.
And therefore, if it's up for renewal in 2 years, you, at that time, you would notify them also, because
There
it,
would be an application to renew it, and then there would be a notice that goes out to those neighbors. But we don't tell people what the decisions that were made,
I just didn't know how far you went when you said as a courtesy.
only to let them know that an application's come in.
And then the fact of the required, at that 2-year period, the fact of the required, and this may be an obvious question, but the fact of the required renewal of the permit without a public hearing means it would not otherwise be noticed, with the rest of our business, is my
It
question.
would be posted on your agenda, but not in newspaper.
On our agenda. Okay.
But at that time, I just wanna clarify, but you would send a notice out to the neighbors.
It is not required by statute, but as a matter of practice, we have always sent out notice to abutting
Okay,
property
I'm
owners.
just clarifying. I think that's reasonable to do for the very first. And it might even be reasonable for the second and third, depending on where they are in town. I just think we have a lot to learn. This is new for us.
Okay.
I agree.
So I'm seeing general nodding heads that
I agree with that.
2-year, so utilizing our new rules and procedures, which we're all kind of, thank you for seeing on the fly, that we are, so I will entertain, I guess, a motion from someone to approve this application for a special exception, subject to a 2-year renewal period from the date of this approval. The applicant will have to come back in and report on the status of the bed and breakfast, and at such time, there will be notice to the abutting landowners to let them know that that 2-year event is happening.
I will move it with the limitation of 2 bedrooms.
Yes.
Thank you, with the
Yes.
clarification.
I second.
Further discussion?
I have some questions.
Public hearing's
You can't.
closed.
Can't ask when you're in the middle of the site visit, I'm sorry.
Any further discussion? The motion is made.
I would just state for the record specifically that, the authority for the time period limitation is pursuant to, section H. 6.3 H.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Right, next up on our list was the application from 15 Lunar Drive for a permit special permit to use a portion of the building by Bravo Gold. Any preliminary discussion amongst the commission? Thoughts, questions?
Seems
No
fine,
problems
seems
with
fine to
this.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't say any
Where it
downside.
is located is fine,
Yeah.
everything's.
because my kids play, there's lots of, I wouldn't throw a stone at the bubble.
Lob.
Lob.
That close.
Just, who's gonna monitor what sort of signage goes up? Because we spend a lot of time approving signs and whatnot, making sure,
Depending on what he proposes, he'll come in and chit chat.
so they'll come back and, okay.
Depending on what he's doing, he'll either be back to you or we'll just go.
Yeah, just so you know, the Advantage Maintenance sign, which is my company,
They can't
is a large sign. And then underneath it, it's about this big by about that long, would be identified, because that's the only space for it.
So, hearing no further discussion, do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second. Any further discussion? Motion approved, motion and seconded. All in favor said aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. The motion carries and.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay. So continuing our work session, should we now take, a look at the 824? So this is an application or referral from the Board of Selectmen regarding improvements to Amity Regional High School. So did everyone get that in their packages? Alright, so the 824 gives us an option, is that right, Chris, or no? What was I reading? That?
Recommendation.
If you're, it's a referral from the Board of Selectmen, you give your opinion to them. You only have 35 days from the date on which they give it to us, so it doesn't start from this meeting, but rather when it came in. And, if you decide against something, the Board of Selectmen can then go against it by a certain vote. So you're just,
It's a super majority that we need to go with.
And so it's just an advisory,
it's an advisory.
Role for
and
us.
The statute used to be a little bit different, and used to specifically say that you were gonna find it in compliance with your town plan conservation and development. It doesn't say that anymore, but usually that's the guide that you use.
and then, so we will either, and so in this session, even though it arrived to us, it doesn't need a public hearing,
No,
because it already had a hearing before the Board of Selectmen? or-
no, it's just a an informational thing, they're here to present to you, Jim Slice is here from Amity.
Oh,
So if you
sorry.
have any questions, you can ask them of Jim and whoever else may be here with him.
Yeah.
And then you make your decision.
Okay, so I'm happy to call up our folks from Amity if you want to come and present what looks like some work on the building and some work in the athletic fields. And should they sign in, Chris? And, yes, if you could sign in and state your names and introduce yourselves.
I'm Dr. Jen Byers, Superintendent for Amity.
And I'm Jim Sysa, the Director of Facilities for Amity.
So welcome. From the look of it, you have a lot planned.
Yes.
Do you want to give us a run through of the two sort of different, or the kind of large projects at a high level?
So I'll speak to the facilities projects with respect to athletics, and then I will let Jim talk about the building facilities projects. So we are looking to make improvements to our stadium area, which would include installing a post-tension concrete track, which should have a lifespan of 50 years or more. It's very similar to the post-tension concrete tennis courts that we just put in. We would be installing an all-weather field to replace the sod field, which would increase our athletic accessibility from one sport, which is currently football, to all 6 field sports, which includes girls field hockey, girls lacrosse, girls soccer, boys football, boys soccer, boys lacrosse. Replacing currently wooden light poles with metal light poles just for durability. Replacing the metal halide lights with LED lights that have less spillage out into the neighborhood. And then putting in a new LED scoreboard that's a multi-sport, kind of like a big giant tablet that would let us run several different sports. And then in what we call Field 3, which is really a practice field that we've turned into a competition field, we would be installing first an ADA compliant walkway so that spectators can actually get to what would hopefully be a set of permanent bleachers as opposed to portable bleachers that are there, and then a second LED scoreboard allowing for a multi-sport venue in Field 3.
And as to the facility items, they're considered maintenance. It's the replacement of air handlers that have been in service since the mid-90s construction project. That's the last phase of what we've been doing over the years. The balance of the parking lot, depending on what the price of oil in the spring is. 2 summers ago, we did a good portion of it, almost half, and this would be included in the second half. And to rebuild the chillers, the 2 chillers. They're 12 years old now. We still call them our new building, but they are 12 years old. And there's some internal maintenance that's needed to extend the life and renew the warranty on those pieces of equipment. So there isn't any changes or additions, it's maintenance on existing or replacement of old units with light
In
units.
terms of the parking lot, it's just resurfacing?
It would be reclaiming it and regrading it and then new asphalt on top.
What portion needs to be reclaimed?
All of it. Last 2 summers ago, we did from the front entrance all the way up to where it lies at the top of the hill, so you either go down to the gym entrance or the field, and the project.
Perhaps that's a construction term of art with which I'm not familiar. What do you mean by reclaiming? So to me, that means that some portion of the parking lot area was abandoned
Oh, no.
at some point. You're not saying that?
No, reclaiming means that they bring in equipment and it grinds up the
Okay.
base, and then if additional base is needed, it's reused, but it's ground up, so you're starting with a fresh base instead of adding over it. I think there's 2 or 3 layers that are in there now, so they're cracked and split, and it's time to redo it right.
So that's the difference, that instead of putting a skim coat of just asphalt on, you're going down.
Correct.
To redo, but they recycle that asphalt
Yes.
as they're going, so they're,
Millings.
Yes.
thank you.
Is the new all-weather field, is the footprint the same as what's currently there?
Yes.
Yes.
And then the light poles are the same height as what's currently there?
Very close.
So how close? I'm just thinking about neighbors and neighborhood and how those lights, even when it's LED, and I know the sort of, the way you get them to point downward, it can impact the neighborhood. It will, because, I mean,
Actually, with the LEDs, you get much better, you can aim them, so the neighbors won't even know that the lights are on. With the big metal halides that are there now, it does.
well, I'm gonna argue that they will know that they're on. That's why I wanna know what the height is. I I mean, you don't have a sense, I mean, you're saying it's close, what does that mean?
I don't know the exact height of the new pole that's being proposed. But it's covering the same footprint of field.
The artificial turf that's being placed on it, what's the useful life of that now?
With proper maintenance, they'll guarantee 10
10.
years. At this point, it's essentially the same field that they just put at the Yale Bowl, and they're finding they can get closer to 15 years with those. Part of the project comes with the equipment that you actually use to maintain it to sort of prolong its lifespan. So that's worked into the proposal itself.
There's been huge advances made in these fields over the last very short period of time, so,
Do you have to water those fields?
No.
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 Just the feel with the little substances that are at the, kind of at the root of the fabric, that little
Shredded
pieces,
tires.
yeah.
There's
There-
pellets.
There is, the system that we're proposing is is the vendor that we're using is a patented, it's called Cool Play. And so it has the crumb rubber as the base underneath it, and then there's a substance that goes on top of it, so you're never really in contact with the rubber at all. And the Cool Play keeps it, what did they say, like 30,
About 40 degrees colder
40
than,
degrees cooler than just, the normal playing surface itself, so, and
So it doesn't have the rubber pellets?
it does, but
but
there's
they're
there's a
encapsulated.
barrier between the pellets barrier and then the synthetic
It really
grass.
keeps it 30 degrees cooler?
and,
Because, I mean, I've been involved in summer tournaments, and they have changed location from the all-weather fields to grass because of the heat.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's actually, that's cool to overuse the word, but that's really good.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's their patented system, it's called Cool Play, and
Yeah.
it's, it's encapsulated and it goes over the top and.
What are you spending now on maintenance of the field on an annual basis?
Depends on if we need to resod, if we need to resod the crown or anything, if we have to, if any games do get played when it's really wet, or, it's about 16,000, and, other than that, it's about 20,000 is what our grounds contractor, allocates to
So
lighting.
it's $20,000 a year?
Yeah, to line the fields and to,
maintain the-
maintain them, aerate and fertilize and those types of things.
And this is gonna cost $2 million.
And the 2 million is for
It inc-
everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Track, lights, scoreboard, and the field.
It's closer to 3 with everything.
Yeah.
I think it was just on the field is approximately 2. Correct? It's approximately $2 million on the field?
That, with the track coupled in with it.
And you're saying it has a useful life of a guarantee of 10 years?
Yes. But we also use the field 16 times a year, and that's it. So we're paying 20,000 for 16 times a year versus somewhere upward of 60 games, 90 practices, and
Phys ed classes.
I mean, you don't use the field other than the 16 games because it couldn't handle the wear and tear.
Correct.
correct. So we can't practice even on it.
I would also think that if the field has a 10-year life, that's the actual turf. And the other items that are being the track, the lights, the scoreboard, those don't need to be replaced.
Correct.
No, I
Just the
understand.
surface, yeah.
On the track,
Yeah.
it's gonna be like the
Yeah.
tennis courts? Is
Yes.
that-
Post-tension concrete.
And that's what track and field people like?
Well,
Or-
the post-tension concrete will be the base instead of asphalt, which, as you know, asphalt has a tendency to heave and crack, and then it splits the rubber surface. On top of the post-tension concrete will be the actual running surface, so there will be
Which
layers.
would be
Correct.
the grippy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, where does practices occur now and where do the other games occur now?
So the other games occur in Field 3, which is the other field that we're looking to improve, because even if we put in the stadium, when you run varsity, JV, and freshman sports in 6 different areas, you still need extra fields. And then the football team practices in a completely separate area from that right now, and again, we're using that for varsity and JV.
So what's gonna happen with that those areas.
We would still need to use those because presumably once the stadium's open, so even right now in the fall, we have girls soccer, boys soccer, and football all happening, and field hockey right now. So chances are, most of the time, the stadium is still going to be used for the competition, and we're still going to need all those other spaces for any of the practices that are happening at the time that the competitions are occurring.
I'm just getting a little confused, because you're saying you're only using it now for 16 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying, and you're saying when you get the new field, you're going to use it 50 or 60 times a year. Where is all that other stuff occurring now?
In sort of like non-fields all around the area, so.
Oh, so it's not even at the school?
It's at the school, but I don't even quite know how to explain it. Sort of right next to the stadium, we just have a grass space. It's not a field, it's just a
Okay.
place where kids practice because it's a flat grass space.
And I imagine it's a nightmare of scheduling all the contests,
So,
so that they can happen reasonably,
Especially with rain delays and cancellations.
yeah.
And through this project, you'll also formalize Field 3, so it'll actually be a more conducive place to actually hold some of those many things you're trying to schedule.
Yes.
So I bet it's, so this is the stadium, there's this, and then there's these two. Can I ask you to come up and show, which one of these is 3? I'll come to you. I just pulled up the, so you can see the stadium, you can see where the baseball and softball diamonds are.
Yep.
This is the space you're talking about, that's 3?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
because that's the biggest one.
And then,
Yes.
and then this is the practice football field.
Yeah.
This big slope.
Yeah,
the-
yeah, I know there's a slope.
That's
yeah.
where the permanent bleachers would go.
And then somebody uses that.
Yes, that's often where JV football is practicing. Yes.
And then the
You guys
eight,
wanna see what? So, here's the stadium.
Yep.
Football's up here, there's a slope here, this is field 3. And I forget what other teams are here, but these are the only spaces that they have. And so they'll be able to use this more essentially.
Mhm. And which one is Field 3 again?
I think 3 was the one on the left, closest to the tennis courts?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that's
down-
3, and there's a slope here,
Yeah,
right?
I think
And
you can
so-
see that grayish.
and that slope is where the permanent bleachers would go as part of the project.
Sorry.
And then,
You know what, you're familiar with.
So we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the one that would be in the same footprint, so.
And no lights for Field 3.
You guys get to
No.
see this?
I'm
You're familiar with it? Okay.
I leaned over.
So, Chris, we can still discuss, what are we heading towards here? Is it a motion, is it a?
It's usually a motion, and you can support what they're proposing to do, you can add comments, whatever you wanna do.
Do we have additional questions, thoughts?
So
Yeah.
dovetail your question, I'm unclear, what's in our purview, what are we supposed to do? I don't understand why it's here.
We need it as a requirement for the bond referendum because it's going out to bond, and that's one of the things that bond council requires. I can tell you from previous experience, if, towns have gone out to bond money and not had approval, and then when it came time to do the project, the town said, no, you're not doing that, and when it, went to the building inspector or permitting applications or whatever different towns might have. And so prior to allowing us to put the bond questions out there, we have to have upfront support from the local planning and zoning.
The section in the statute requires the town to submit the proposal to the planning commission. It's a requirement. It's by state statute. If it entails, because I looked at the statute today, if it entails maintenance and repair, we have no say in it, including resurfacing of roads, is the way the statute reads.
So just capital improvements.
If it's capital improvements, they have to come before us. And that's why he's saying from the bond council point of view, under the statute, it's required. We can be overruled.
And if we don't
Which
do
is a good
anything,
thing.
it just goes through,
It
correct?
goes
Like,
automatic.
if we just,
Because I can't figure out what we could rule, how could you rule against, it's not really a zoning.
No, it has
I
nothing,
understand, right, I get it, it's state, okay.
it's a state requirement, and we have in the past given comments on things.
Well, the whole thing is subject to a vote in December, isn't it, the
Yes,
proposal?
referendum.
Oh, yeah, it's
The
gonna
bond.
be,
yeah.
December 4th is the referendum, right? That's
Good.
what
I
it
think that
is.
sounds
So-
right.
So a technical question on where the statute, it looked like we either do an approval as our planning and zoning commission, or if we decided that it was simply the repair of existing property and not a substantial improvement, we could write a letter to that effect saying that we were not acting upon it because it is mere.
it's clear a good portion is not just maintenance and repair.
So the question there is that there are two things in referendum. Question one is repair of the air handlers and refurbishing the
Now
chillers.
it's replacement in certain areas.
Replacement.
And I look, it's funny, because I started looking at it, whether or not repair under Connecticut law, maintenance and repair includes replacement, and it's unclear.
So I think for belts and suspenders that we would just
Yeah.
more easily, if we're
Exactly.
going to approve, we should just approve of both
Right.
pieces. Even though the first one seems to be in the gray area of whether it's repair or maintenance, it might be better just to have our blessing on it.
I'll just say that I do think it's worth saying that the lights, attention should be paid to the light that is cast in the neighborhood, because you can see those. You can see those lights from afar, even when they're really good LED lights. They can glow, and if it's a damp, misty evening, they even, they glow from afar. So just saying that, you said you couldn't give the exact height, fine, I understand that, but I think that it's worth saying, I think, that attention should be paid to the light cast by the new light poles, especially if they're taller. That's basically my concern. If they're the same height or smaller, that's fine, that's already within what is already being done, but if they're any taller,
I know they're not taller.
okay, well, there you go, that's good. I still think it's worth saying.
So that might still be a comment in if our eventual approval to be, cognizant of the new lighting system and its potential effect on neighboring properties. So with that sort of addition, any other things that we would want to comment on this proposal?
How quickly would this be done if approval happens at the referendum in December? Would this be up and running for next fall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the new turf?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, turf can be fast. Yeah.
Right, so do I hear a motion for approval of, I guess, both questions that will be posed on referendum with the comment from the planning and zoning to be aware and cognizant of the potential of light pollution with the new lighting system on neighboring properties? Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Next fall, all those teams will have all those new fields.
All right. So there was, in addition, an application that came in for a request for an amendment to our zoning regulations, section 3.3HH, to not only permit the manufacture of beer, but also permit the manufacture of liquor in a distillery. Is this something seeking an amendment that would require a public hearing?
Requires a public hearing, we have to ship it off to, Council of Governments for their comment. And you've got a meeting next Thursday? This is the first Thursday.
The second Thursday, yeah, that's
So
it.
I'm gonna try to get it in for the second Thursday.
And just a sort of procedural question, because this has been put before us, we have to send it along? We couldn't just say, well, we don't even want to consider amendments right now?
When you have an application come before you, you have to take it and act on it.
Okay.
You can't, because if you don't act on it, it's automatically approved.
Right. Just curious. So do we need a motion to,
You can do it by consensus.
Okay. so do folks, here, so we should have a public hearing on distillery?
Will there be samples?
Can we-
Actually, what they're proposing is not to have it, it's more of a place.
It's R&D.
People who are coming, it would be more of a place for them to experiment on their own and have space to do that. It wouldn't be a.
It's not gonna be a distillery.
I'll lead the diligence trip.
Okay, in case we do need an on-site visit to, but I did read that, they seem to be a place for your tinkerers and sort of folks who are experimenting in this space to have a place to safely
Safely
do it. Versus it didn't seem like they were gonna be to the public or
They
public facing.
represent, if it gets that far, if you
Yeah.
change your regs, then you would have that application. And the way they presented it, it would not be open to the public.
But that'll be a question for us, though, in the change of our regs, because we do allow
Right.
beer manufacture
Because when that space was previously occupied by the brewery before they became bigger and moved across the street, they did have, tastings and, it's something you need to consider when you do that.
They came before us several times, each time asking for more. Which is okay.
I'm not seeing section 3.3 HH.
Yeah, I saw it earlier.
It's towards, it's towards the back, it's all liquor establishments.
Yeah, it's on page, 52.
52.
Thank you.
And the manufacturing of beer is at the top left of 53.
So it's HH1 subsection F allows the manufacture of beer.
So you would want the, liquor.
Or liquor would be the addition.
There's so many different kinds of liquor licenses.
Yeah, it's interesting that the amendment is asking for, whatever it is, the proposed change would be
Manufacturing of liquor.
manufacturing of liquor,
Or alcoholic beverages.
right? But they're not gonna do manufacture, they're doing R&D.
That's the type of permit that they,
Okay,
when they came
all right.
in and said you need to apply for whatever it is that you would need from the state to do what you want to do. And so
Okay,
that's what they came up with.
yep.
So we have general agreement to set this up for a public hearing next time? I see nods around the table.
Makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think those are the main things on our list, and Andrew, if you have a report from SCROG.
Sure, there was a meeting on October 10th that I attended. The action items included proposed zoning regulation amendments pertaining to the manufacturing and sale of beer, wine, cider, spirits, and farm distilleries, farm breweries, farm wineries, by the town of Madison. There was found to be no intermunicipal impact nor adverse effect upon Long Island Sound with respect to that. A similar, City of Meriden proposed zoning regulation amendment pertaining to breweries, brew pubs, and brew pub restaurants. They decided to define each somewhat differently. And again, no intermunicipal impact or adverse environmental effect. Town of Orange, proposed zoning regulation amendments that had to do with chickens. Pertaining to the keeping of chickens, similar poultry, rabbits, and similar animals. Also, no intermunicipal impact or environmental. And finally, Town of East Haven, that had to do with definitions in their regulations with respect to assembly halls, boarding, room house, child care group, commercial recreation facilities, convenience, retail gas stations, and motor vehicle repair facilities. And to establish a village district overlay and development improvement district and residential enterprise district. There was some discussion as to whether this might have some intermunicipal impact. It was found not to be the case, and it was returned without negative comment about any intermunicipal impact or environmental impact. So that, and as Christine said, there'll be another meeting next Thursday. Have not yet received that agenda.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew on that? No? Thank you for serving as our representative over there. Appreciate it. I will add something to our list of work sessions. I substituted for Yoni Zamir over at the West Rock Ridge State Park Advisory Council meeting, which was held here in Woodbridge on October 17th, and I will give my very brief report out from that. Tom Tyler, a former colleague of mine, was there to give the report from DEEP. Chris, you were there too. The Passport to Parks, for those who don't know, is a fee on your vehicle registration. Has really transformed the way that state parks are now funded and operated. It is a steady source of funding that also survived the legislative session and wasn't swept, and has enabled them to have more rational budgeting and staffing. Not the least of which because they can budget on a calendar year instead of having the state fiscal year, which turns over July 1, which is the peak of summer beach season, which is about the hardest time to budget and plan for. If their budget ends on the 30th of June and then a new budget comes, they now can actually have a longer term plan. From the state, there is no bond bill yet, and parks construction, including things they may want to do in West Rock Ridge, will suffer from not having a source of capital improvement bond funds for the parks. There are plenty of dead hazardous trees. We all have them in our yards. They have them all over the parks. They've been trying to get after them and inventory them and take out the ones most likely to fall on picnic areas and campgrounds and the like.
I volunteer to help.
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
Mr. Shark sensing you.
And then a side note that for those who've been to Silver Sands, they've actually gotten that back through the insurance company wrangling, so they're going to be restarted. They've already restarted the restoration and reconstruction with the hopes of another attempt at opening it for the 2020 Memorial Day season.
Did they ever catch the person who set it on fire?
So the big fire was more likely than not the contractors who were trying to dry paint with industrial sort of propane dryers that may have been left on. There was then a smaller secondary fire lit by the same kids who admitted to setting fire to the Shakespeare Theater in Stratford. That was of a few trailers there. But they did not, they adamantly said they didn't start the big fire. They said they started the small one, but they had nothing to do with the big one.
Were the fires concurrent?
No, they weren't. They were a week or so apart. Yeah. The secondary fires were of the construction trailers that were there.
The beach club?
Well, the public beach. No, not Silver, in Milford, not East. There's a private beach club in East Haven.
Right.
This is the state beach in Milford, which hopefully next spring we'll have, next Memorial Day, we'll have a bathhouse and whatnot. The other role of this advisory council is to actually acquire land and add to the West Rock Ridge State Park, and they actually had 2 substantial acquisitions of property for those in and around that area. It's actually in your deed that if you are selling, you have to offer to the state a first right to buy your property if you're selling. So they have added some additional sort of, I think 50, 75 acres in total.
In Hamden? Yeah,
In Hamden.
that's pretty
right?
significant.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yep, and then there were just general reports of maintenance and trying to make sure that, you know, things are, folks who are on that council include a bunch of neighbors of that park, and they're always curious when things are gonna get mowed and when things are gonna get cleared and cleaned. So that is my report. Chris, did I miss anything of importance? Thank you. I know a little bit about that one. The last thing on our work session agenda was, I think, our continued placeholder for the Plan of Conservation and Development. Is there anything, Chris, we need to talk about there? Nope. And our final item are our meeting minutes from October 7th, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
There's one spelling error, I'll give it to you.
There's a couple
Typo.
verbs, words that are wrong, so I'll give you that too.
Okay, so aside from our very good close read from our folks, do I have a motion?
You just can't resist.
I know you can't. It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's moved and second. All in favor of approving the minutes, subject to minor corrections and edits from our, aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you for approving the minutes. Any other business, additional items? No, hearing none, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.